Now, many of you will be familiar with the type foundry Sharp Type. Founded in 2015 by Chantra, Malee and Lucas Sharp, its releases have been featured across publications, brands, and design houses galore, and have won several awards along the way with the TDC, the European Design Awards, Communication Arts, and more. 2 years ago, Chantra also launched a first-of-its-kind initiative supporting women of color type designers and helping them to kickstart their careers. The Malee Scholarship offers an annual grant and mentorship program to one young woman of color working in the industry. Now, so far, the scholarship has resulted in the creation of typefaces Malee Serif and Malee Sans, as well as an ongoing showcase that shines a light on cutting-edge typefaces designed by women. I'm delighted to say that we're joined both by Lucas and Chantra. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Great to see you. Yeah, really
really
nice
glad
to
be here.
see you. You're not together. You're dialing in from two separate parts of the country. Where are you dialing in from?
We are.
There's a phone.
Oh boy, I'm in California in Marin County. Chantra's in Newport, Rhode Island, where she's from. Yeah, we kind of jettisoned New York as the COVID curtain was coming down, and we've been kind of splitting our time amongst both of our families ever since, which is kind of a big personal priority for both of us. So
Absolutely.
We're apart for a little bit, but we'll be back together very soon.
But you've kind of switched, I guess. When I saw you in New York, you were in, I think, Little Italy, like a really busy part of town, and you've kind of switched that up for trees and chickens. You were saying.
Yeah, we're living the good
we've made
life
quite the
in
shift.
rural Northern California.
Fantastic.
And
well, instead of you both,
it's.
Also, you go.
I was gonna say, it's nice. It's a major gear change for us. I think we're both still kind of acclimating, but I think after living in southern Spain for a number of years, it's kind of nice to dial the volume back down a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, we'll come on to Spain because I do want to talk about your time there. But just for everyone at home, just so you're aware, instead of Sharp Type giving us a talk today, we're going to be having a discussion, and I've got loads of questions for them. But I've also, if you have any questions for Lucas and Chantra, please do pop your questions in the chat alongside your stream, and I'll do my best to ask it for you. But I guess first off, Lucas, maybe we can start with you. You launched Sharp Type, as I mentioned, together in 2015. You'd already built up a bit of a reputation among type designers, but was there a moment when you feel like Sharp Type really came into its own? Was there a particular typeface perhaps, or a custom font for a brand maybe that really made you feel like, okay, we've arrived as Sharp Type?
I think it was the website. When we first launched 1.0, it was like such a kind of a bootstrapped endeavor because we had, very, very little capital. We were kind of like working with friends on all aspects of it, like with the design and development. And it was a moment where it really hit, where, everything had kind of come together, that it was really like greater than the sum of its parts. Chantra had done incredible work, kind of like, taking a look at the competitive landscape, like where we fit into this industry, what our licensing strategy is going to be, what kind of clients we're trying to cultivate, and coming up with kind of like an aesthetic strategy for like how we present our work, trying to not just hit like a one-off trend cycle, but also still feeling very contemporary. Something it was gonna last us, as long as it has. I think we're probably due for a new website now, but at the time it just felt like kind of very fortuitous and miraculous that we kind of actually managed to pull together like a scrappy little e-commerce thing that actually showed off our work pretty decently. And I think I credit Chantra a lot with that.
Yeah, definitely did that for sure. You mentioned there the kind of trend cycle. I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, as a type foundry, how much are you kind of aware of the trend cycle? How much do you feel like you need to kind of engage with it? And how much do you want to, I guess, steer well clear of anything that kind of, comes in and out so fleetingly?
Yeah, I think it's inescapable. I think it's like, and type design is so much about, fashion forecasting, because, you spend years and years on these things. So you're really kind of trying to figure out like where the aesthetic zeitgeist is going to be when you're actually ready to publish the thing. So I mean, hitting that trend cycle is definitely like, important and can be very, good for business and stuff like that. But we do really try to, kind of get into our art cave and, shut out external kind of noise and try to like, build something that's wholly our own. But so yeah, it's kind of it's kind of a dance you have to do. You kind of have to stay true to yourself, but also, it's at the same time, like design and all kind of artistic culture kind of happens in movements. We're kind of like building things collaboratively. It's an intergenerational dialogue. So, things come kind of back in vogue, and it's important to kind of know where the aesthetic zeitgeist is heading and kind of, chart your course according to that strategically. But I think if it defines you too much, you lose something.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I guess I remember we did an interview with you a few years ago about your typeface Beatrice, which I think is named after your mother, Lucas, I believe. And you talked about how it was the closest you'd come to carving out, as you described it, a niche in the aesthetic ecosystem, which I think is a lovely way of putting it. How would you kind of describe your place today in the typography world? And I guess what is that niche in the aesthetic ecosystem that you think you now feel like you're able to inhabit?
I think the way I kind of see myself right now is like actually kind of like behind the scenes. Like I feel like I'm purposefully kind of like receding into the background to try to, make room for, other talented up and coming people that we're publishing, that we're promoting with our platform, trying to build something bigger than the two of us. Incredibly proud to publish like Carta by Milan Tuong, who's just incredibly talented. Mark Rual, we've published a few of his fonts. Connor Davenport. We're trying to build kind of like a community foundry model, and we're always looking for fresh talent. And I think that's kind of given me the space to really, uh, you know, take my time with stuff that I'm working on. I'm definitely still developing my craft and trying to perfect some stuff I've been working on for a very long time. But I think my our aesthetic niche is hard to pin down. Beatrice was, you know I kind of set out to do something wholly original, and which of course I didn't do. Like I was saying before, these things are in the zeitgeist. They're like in the ether, and things happen, as movements. And I think this idea of internal contrast that Beatrice did was kind of on the tip of a lot of people's tongues for at the time. Mark Rualt, our collaborator, he published a typeface called Trois Mille, where the black weights really do that kind of explicitly, where it really collapses in the center. But I think, by like kind of naming it and kind of having like a really vigorously outlined, contrast methodology, even though, lots of people have been experimenting with those ideas forever. I mean, it's in wood type, the way that when wood type gets really, really dark, you kind of cheat in the central strokes in order to, have that monolinear feel, so the outer strokes can be, as thick as like the O and stuff like that. So I mean, it's been around for a long time, but in terms of our current like aesthetic niche or whatever, I think we're really just trying to avoid having one. I think we've kind of like, had some moments of, inspiration and fleeting achievement, but yeah, we're just trying to, to keep that going and kind of stay fresh and not pigeonhole ourselves into anything.
That's very modest of you, I'm sure. But Chantra, I guess we're seeing some images coming up of work, but also of the Malee scholarship, and I promise we will get onto that in a second. But before we get onto that, I guess just to talk about, you're obviously the Foundry's CEO, and I'm curious about how the business model of a Foundry works, particularly one on this kind of community model. How much of your time are you kind of splitting between, I guess those custom typefaces for brands and then retail typefaces? What's that difference between the two, and how do you kind of balance them, I guess?
It's a good question. Running a type foundry is a really interesting challenge because it's the coupling of two formerly independent industries. You have the art and creative meeting the engineering and the software side. And so we have to manage those simultaneously. On the creative side, our mission is to create quality typefaces and really pursue a diverse range of styles. Like Lucas was saying, we don't really want to be fit into any particular niche. And that really has to come from a place of inspiration. And, I think when our designers are excited and motivated and inspired to do to work on a project, we're going to get the best work out of them. So we always try and find those fun projects for each individual designer. And that could be the monolinear geosans if they're interested in that, but it also can be the really fun display type that we end up building a lot of. Og is a great example of that, which was a passion project of Lucas. He also mentioned Carta Nueva by Milan. We just released Greenstone, which was inspired by this really robust archive that we had of Og and designed by Connor Davenport. So that's our pursuit there. And then on the other side, we really have to be very careful and strategic about our licensing foundation and our strategy. What I like to remind our designers is that they're artists first and foremost, and they are not selling their font, they're selling the right to use it. And it's really important as a foundry to establish what those rules are. And I think on that side, font licensing is by no means easy to understand. And one of our greatest challenges is to communicate that to our audience in a way that is approachable. And so that's kind of our next challenge too on an operational side, is trying to, make our licensing as concise as possible and find ways, maybe interesting ways, to communicate that to our audience so that, it's more achievable. When it comes to bespoke versus our building out our own retail library, I would probably say that split is a very strong word. One of the greatest challenges with working on bespoke work with clients, which can be really gratifying, is the time constraints. With our own work, we eventually have to set deadlines for ourselves, but we also have the flexibility to push things out if we feel like we need more time. And of course, with clients, they have deadlines that we need to meet, but we're also, keeping that same level of quality that we hold ourselves to with our own internal work. So that can be a big challenge. And what that means is, as a boutique foundry, that we can really only do a few a year. To really dedicate that time and make a commitment to our clients and do them justice. This is an extension of our team here.
Hard at work.
So, yes, exactly. And we have had some really fun projects. Dropbox, you mentioned, comes to mind. That was working with Jessica Svensson and her team on their internal design team was really gratifying. And we expanded what was already 249 fonts to 294 fonts, created a variable type, and also did localizations for Thai and Cyrillic. So you can see the sort of the breadth of what a project can take on, and why we need to, make sure that we're selective and don't wear ourselves too thin. Another really fun project was just recently with Jesse Reed on a project for Williams College, which is one of or is the largest liberal arts university in the United States. And we did a really pretty robust, diverse set of independent styles that were all pulled from their archives and inspired by their own university archives, and even stone carvings on the property. So, we like to be selective and work on projects that, are kind of holistic. We think that's really great. There are other foundries that, are more heavily weighted in the bespoke realm, but for us, our mission is to really expand and branch out in our own library, and also because it has a longer shelf life. It's, you know, it's not kind of one and done with the client work. We you know, it's more fruitful over time because it's our own intellectual property.
Amazing. Thanks for that. That's such a good insight into how it works. And I don't think I personally haven't had that kind of understanding of how it actually works behind the scenes.
Lesson 101.
Exactly. Appreciate that. But Chantra, I guess we are here this evening or this afternoon for you to talk about creativity with a purpose. And I did mention that in 2019 you launched the Malee Scholarship. Could you just talk us through, first of all, I guess, why you decided to launch that initiative? I mean, had you been thinking about it for a long time before you kind of actually made the step of launching?
Well, the Malee Scholarship is very personal to me and very close to my heart, from, you know, because of my own background. I'm first generation on my dad's side, who is from Thailand, and my mom is of Spanish and Native American descent. And you know, growing up, it was such a huge part of our identity. It was our identity, and we were very proud of it. It was a little different when I walked outside my door. I grew up in a small town in New England, and you know, it really was lacking in diversity. And while I made some, you know, lifelong friends, I definitely struggled to find my community. And I think maybe if I had been in a more diverse community, you know, with people who shared similar cultural values, that it would have been a great, a different experience for me. And it wasn't until moving to New York City that it was, you know, the first time people weren't asking me where I was from, because it didn't matter. I mean, you know, everyone's from everywhere in a place like New York. So that really solidified me the importance of, you know, diversity, and that was an issue that sort of stuck with me, and that I took very seriously just throughout my years. And I also was already pretty involved. Social work really interested me. I had been volunteering on various things since I was a kid up into adulthood. And when I took a career test in college, it predicted I would be a non-for-profit. So here we are. And we also took great interest already. We were kind of dipping our toes in trying to give back. With Respira Black, for example, Lucas decided to donate all of the proceeds forever to the NRDC, which in the United States, it's the National Resources Defense Council, a group of incredible lawyers who are fighting to preserve our environment and help those who are suffering the most from the effects of climate change. So I had already, you know, it was really an amalgam of my personal experience, and then finally being in a position to do something. I was now I had owned my own business, and I was noticing in my new community and in that industry, it was very familiar to how I was growing up. But now I could really, you know, establish something to try and just move the needle. And it was that and Lucas's encouragement and really helping me sort of articulate what this project would be, that I was able to make it happen.
Fantastic. And I guess, I mean, just to give a bit of a kind of background to it, how does it actually work? I mean, I kind of mentioned that there's mentorship involved as well as a kind of grant.
Yeah.
Maybe talk us through the actual kind of way, the mechanics of how it works.
Yeah, sure. So every year, you know, we receive a number of applicants, and we select one recipient who gets a $6,000 grant to go toward anything. That can be toward a specific educational program in type, or just to have the time to sit down and continue the development of their own typeface, because that's one of the greatest barriers of entry, is just to have the time. And there's also a mentorship that goes along with that. We have a program of about 10 sessions where they have a typeface that they're going to continue to push along and get feedback from the team. Lucas is a big involvement there, as well as the rest of Sharp Type. And also learning other lessons along the way. I do I do a licensing course, for example, and we really try and give them a holistic view of what it means to run a type foundry, and help guide them to you know, figure out maybe where it is that they want to pursue. But very early on, we realized that we couldn't just, this wasn't just going to be a single scholarship for a single recipient. We were, overwhelmed by the amount of applicants that we got, and further beyond that, just the amount of talent that was coming in. And so we very quickly established new sort of categories and have recognized coincidentally 3 finalists who were top contenders for the recipient position, as well as women of typographic excellence who just showed were very well adept at type design, and we thought would be an injustice to not showcase their work. And so really now we're seeing ourselves also as kind of a database of top talent that we're discovering and hopefully sharing with the rest of the community.
Yeah, fantastic. It's such a great initiative. Yeah. And I guess, I mean, looking at, you're obviously both very connected to the type design community. Do you think type design as a community, as a kind of sector, is worse than other parts of the design industry when it comes to diversity, or is it just bad across the board, and this is somewhere where you really feel like you can have an impact?
Well, I think what's important to note prior to answering that question is kind of defining what diversity means. And it's very different in different parts of the world. But for us as a Western foundry, we do notice that there's generally that the industry is generally kind of a white male dominated industry. And that's not really unlike, I would say, the design industry as a whole. I was in branding prior to this, and the agency and our competitive agencies were mostly male dominated, and also all of the clients that we had that spanned across many different industries. So I think as a whole, across the board, we're seeing it as an issue, and I think it's broadly recognized now that there is a discrepancy that we're trying to boost up. But I also don't want to undermine and forget that there have been a lot of incredible women and people of color that have already contributed and continue to contribute to the industry. I just think that there is a lot of room to continue moving toward that trajectory. And there are other people that are involved in that as well. There's Alphabets comes to mind, which is a really amazing institution of women in the type design world who are trying to raise awareness about this exact issue and also empower women in the industry, provide mentorship and what have you. It's a really great place, and they've offered a lot of support to us as the Malee Scholarship. And also, following the announcement of our award, even Monotype released a type design scholarship for people of color. So, it's really exciting to see how, we're all kind of moving each other along a little bit, little by little. And I have high hopes for the industry.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's good to be at the vanguard of that and kind of pushing that with those companies with that kind of scale as well is great. I guess just finally, what are your plans with the Malee Scholarship going forwards? I mean, we've just seen a couple of the recipients popping up on screen, which is fantastic to see. But what are the kind of next steps and the next kind of phases for that?
Yeah, well, we have long-term and short-term goals for the Malee Scholarship. I think starting with long-term, I'm really excited to follow these women and all of our applicants and see where they go in their career. And I'm really hopeful that when they reach a point of success and they're in the position to do so, that they pay it forward. And that's something that we really emphasize in our mission, is, finding people that are not only, passionate about type design, but also, take an interest and are involved in their community. And from my own experience, I was a recipient of a scholarship from the Urban League of Rhode Island when I was in high school, and it was about $5,000, I think, that could go toward any educational expense going into college. And so while the financial aspect was really great, it was really the vote of confidence that was so profound to me. Just having that support was really immense at the time in my life. And so this is, whatever, 15 years later, this is sort of my way to contribute and pay it forward. And so I'm excited to see and pressuring our girls to think about that as they move forward in their careers. But then, on the tactical side and the short-term goals, we really just want to find more people and reach more applicants. And that just means greater exposure, which, we're trying to do progressively. And we're finally ready to open our doors to involvement from the larger community. We had a lot of support and interest in the beginning, but when we launched, we really didn't know what we were doing. So we kind of took a pause, and now we're ready and excited for them to come. We actually just released a donations page on our website, the maleescholarship.org. So anyone who's interested, please visit. You can donate any amount of money that you can, or if you are interested in some sort of mentorship program to be involved with, or just shooting us a message, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, so those are our primary goals.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, great to hear there's a donation page as well. Yeah, hopefully people are reaching into their pockets as we speak. We've had a question from the audience, which I think is probably one for you, Lucas, to answer. But Olivia asks, what do you think are the key factors to consider for type design forecasting? Which is a potentially huge question, but yeah, maybe a few things to pick out for type design forecasting.
Well, I think it's hard to say. It's kind of just like keeping an eye, keeping an ear to the ground, like I think there's like typeface design is such like a kind of like a legacy thing that a lot of like historic beautiful typefaces kind of end up having little resurgent moments that kind of spell the a trend cycle that will pop in the next couple years, like in I think it was like 2014 no 2015, you could start to see like Cooper Black getting used a lot, and like a lot of those old kind of like more psychedelic kind of funky types, and there's kind of been an awesome resurgence of that. So it's kind of hard, I think it's I think it'd be more productive as a young type designer to find like a style and a genre, or just some kind of move that really excites you and makes you like passionate and really like want to draw. The best typefaces are the ones that I think it's very evident that someone had like a really good time drawing it. So fashion forecasting is really tricky, and it's kind of like like a soothsaying like oracle thing. Like it's hard to like define into words, but just keep your ear to the ground, and just be aware of like where the trends are now, and try to kind of like extrapolate that into the future, taking into account what it feels like to be alive right now and kind of the present conditions we're living under.
Absolutely. And I think as Chantra mentioned, sometimes it does take a year, 18 months, even beyond that to create a typeface. So they're slow moving trends in some ways as well because of that, because of how long it takes to
yeah,
work.
totally. Like
it's true.
Like Times New
You have
Roman
to think
is kind of
ahead
having
years
a
in
moment
advance.
right now. Yeah, definitely. So it's if you're diligent about it, you can kind of catch the wave and surf it.
Yeah, suss it out.
That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, I remember a type designer telling me once that you shouldn't trust a typeface that's taken less than 6 months to make, which is maybe a bit much, but I'm not a type designer, so I'll leave that to you guys to decide. Maybe one last question, Lucas. Just we were slightly running out of time, but yeah, can you talk us through what Sharp Type's currently working on, and anything you've got, I guess, coming up that we can look forward to?
Got a ton of fun stuff. We made sure to put a bunch of unreleased stuff up in the slides here. But something I will talk about that we are getting into in a major way over the last 3 years is really looking to kind of move beyond just Latin and delve into other scripts. So we've made sure to basically include like every single Latinized language that we can in our character sets. Like the last 3 releases we have include like Vietnamese. So we're really trying to be like kind of inclusive in all aspects of the Foundry. But we kind of like have delved like headfirst and taken it upon ourselves to develop like CJK, like all the Hanzi based scripts, which are the hardest nuts to crack. And of course, we work with native designers and collaborators every single step of the way. But just from, you know, personally, I've been, you know, had just so much enjoyment and kind of given so much life to my practice and my passion for this craft, kind of getting into, you know, figuring out what like how these different writing systems function. Even though I'm not speaking the language, I understand, you know, the different, even the different like tools that are used, like the ink brush in you know, Hanzi based scripts compared to the broad nib pen in Latin, you know, and how those two writing systems can sit together on the same page, you know, because it's uh it's a global world we're living in, and you know, these things need to kind of exist in harmony, even though they're like completely different kind of you know, conceptions of how writing works. And just understanding, just like, I mean, the incredible efficiency of Hanzi. I mean, you go and Google Translate and, you know, translate a page of English and it'll just go into like a tiny paragraph of Hanzi because it's so dang efficient. Understanding the legibility, like how Hanzi readers are reading the outside shapes of the letters, similar to how you know, Latin readers are reading the top of the boma. You know, the elegant simplicity of Hangul, like the most, you know, probably the most brilliantly designed written language ever, where it's incredibly modular. There's a few base, you know, consonants and vowels and shapes that are actually the shape of your mouth when you make them. Like the O sound is like a little O circle, you know, that kind of thing. Like it's just ingenious. And the way that they kind of like fit together in this modular fashion. So it has that efficiency, but you can learn it. I mean, you won't know what you're saying, but you can learn what the sounds are and you can sound out, you know, words, you know, quicker than Latin. It's an incredible feat of engineering. The beauty of Japanese, like I'm obsessed with hiragana because it's like the most like curvy, wiggly, beautiful, like specific. Like you can get away with so much in terms of like how the skeleton of Latin, you know, what you can dress it up. Whereas the,
Right.
you know, the strokes and the emphasis are so specific in these languages. So kind of just like playing with those, you know, and having kind of one family that's like all these different languages is kind of like this, you know, it's an exercise in futility in some ways, but it's also like an incredibly interesting and complicated problem to solve. And you know, the semiotics of form, you know, like what these forms mean in these different cultures, the kind of similar styles, like, you know, they have sans serif styles there, like in Japanese it's called like gashukai, and how those have kind of like evolved in parallel to the corresponding Latin styles, and how they're kind of like, you know, based on their own, you know, history, but can kind of, you can kind of be, you know, slightly, you know, molded to kind of work together.
Right.
So, you know, all that stuff has just been absolutely fascinating to work with over the last few years. So hopefully we'll have, you know, some of that stuff for retail at some point. We kind of have to like refigure our whole e-commerce system to, you know, work with the global audience if we're selling to people all over the world. So it's a huge undertaking in a lot of ways, but I think that's some of the most exciting stuff we're working on right now, besides just, you know, still, you know, making sweet fonts, sweet Latin fonts.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, guys, we're going to have to end it there because we're slightly out of time. But thank you so much for your time and for those great answers. It's been a pleasure talking
Yeah,
to you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Matt. Good to see you
Been
again, my
great to be
friend.
here.